Welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be discussing another really important rabbi in the Masorah, in the Jewish tradition of Jewish law, and in general of Judaism, Rav Ashi. That was his name. Now, we ended off last time, we talked about Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who was the compiler of the Mishnah. Rav Ashi, about 400 years later, maybe a little less, maybe 300 years later, was the compiler of the Talmud. Rav Ashi was in the fifth generation or sixth generation of the rabbis of the Talmud. He was a student primarily of Rabbi Kahana. He was also similar to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. He was born in the year or the day that Rava, who was one of the great sages of the middle, kind of in the earlier generations of the Amoraim, of the rabbis of the Talmud, and he was born on the day that he passed away, or the year that he passed away, similar to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi that we mentioned earlier. Rav Ashi also, similar to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, it says that from the time of Moses to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, there was never Torah and greatness, meaning wealth, in the same place in one person. And Rav Ashi, they said, from Rabbi Yehuda Nasi to Rav Ashi, there was never Torah and greatness, again meaning wealth, in one place. When it comes to his wealth, it says that he was someone who possessed white glass, which apparently was an extremely expensive thing. And when the rabbis in his study group were getting a little rowdy, he one time smashed this white glass to kind of break them out of. He thought they were getting a little bit too comfortable, and to kind of calm them down. It's just an interesting anecdote. So Rav Ashi, he lived a very long life. He was born, I believe, around the year 327. He was somebody who was the head of a yeshiva in a place called Masa Machasia. It was again, this time we're now in Babylon. This is no longer in. We're no longer in Israel like we were previously. The Jewish people are exiled from the land of Israel. And therefore the Talmud is all written in Aramaic. Now, what happened was, in this time also, it was a kind of a peaceful time. The king was, Inzgarid the second, some sort of Persian king. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And things were a little bit calm. And again, because of Rav Ashi's wealth and political connections, he was able to accomplish this of getting the Talmud together. Now, people tend to make a mistake that Rav Ashi was the end of the Talmud. It's not true. The Talmud continued for another about 100 years of the period of Amoraim, and there are even rabbis who are post, quote-unquote, of the Talmud who ended up getting their sayings or teachings were inserted into the Talmud. Rav Ashi was the one who collected all the, similar to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he collected all the previous topics and debates that had gone on for centuries and had been passed down, and kind of he put them together. And it says that it took him 60 years. He would do 2 tractates a year, and he did it, and there were 60 tractates, so it took him 30 years to get through it once, and he did it again. And he lived till about the age of 90, so he was able to, for 60 years, he was able to kind of, there was the first version and kind of the edited version of the Talmud. And there are things actually that we have, there are a few places where we kind of have this kind of play out, where we see the first version versus the second version in the Talmud. Now, what is the Talmud? The Talmud is the Mishnah, but this time the rabbis of the Talmud are discussing the Mishnah and what is the specifics of the Mishnah that we could understand. What are the specific laws we can understand from the precise wording of the Mishnah, and what are where did the Mishnah get its laws from? And that way we can understand where the laws are coming from. So, for example, if the Mishnah will say, we're allowed to marry somebody through money. We give something of monetary value to the groom, gives something of monetary value to the bride. The first question the Talmud is going to say, how do you know that? The Talmud challenges everything. They want to know, and the Talmud will have to respond with either a verse or another Mishnah or some sort of intellectual idea that will explain that. And these discussions happened in the study halls, and were eventually passed down from generation to generation until 6 generations later, when Rav Ashi, he took those, edited them, put in the lingo that we now know of the Talmud, and like this, the Talmud became accessible. However, as we'll see in the coming videos, the Talmud was still kind of inaccessible, because of there's so much dialogue, that which is why Rabbi Yehuda Nasi left out all the dialogue. He just said the law, but there's so much dialogue, the law kind of gets stuck. I'm sorry, not stuck, but lost in the middle of that. So Rav Ashi was a tremendous scholar and leader, and was able to get all these different things together, the different lingo, like, it basically kind of say, this is a challenge to the previous teaching, this is an proof to the previous teaching. All that kind of lingo was put in by Rav Ashi, and his kind of his partner in this was Ravina, another famous sage. Maybe we'll talk about at a later date, who was like his student slash colleague. Now, Rav Ashi is considered, like we said, the compiler of the Talmud, but he was not, as we said, the end of the Talmudic period, but it was the end of a significant period of peace, and kind of paved the way for the Talmud being transcribed until the printing press, which is not for another, 1,000 years later. Another thing about Rav Ashi was his piety and his dedication to the community. There's a story that when he came to the place where he lived, where he became the rabbi and the Rosh Yeshiva, the head of the academy, was called Masya Machasya, and he saw the synagogue needed repairs. And when he talked about it, nobody really took him that seriously, to the point where he actually put his bed into the synagogue and refused to leave until all the repairs were made, which galvanized the community, as you can imagine. The last thing we'll say about him was that before he passed away, he meets the Talmud records that he meets the angel of death, and he tells the angel of death, "Give me 30 days. Come back in 30 days. Why? I want one more opportunity to study the Talmud. I want to have the Talmud in my hand before I ascend to the heavenly academy." And the angel of death comes back 30 days later, and he's like, "Oh, what's your rush?" And he said, "It's time for the next generation." And the Reish Galusa, who was the political leader at the time, to become an independent leader, who at that time everybody was kind of subservient to Rav Ashi, and I guess in heaven they had decided that it was time for the other political and Jewish scholarship to pass on to the next generation. So again, Rav Ashi, really important person in compiling, editing, and kind of fine-tuning the Talmud. It was not the end of the Talmud, but was a significant end of a very important chapter of the rabbis of the Talmud, known as the Amoraim. He passed away about the year 432. And next time we'll discuss the post-Talmudic rabbis.